I should continue this. Right, thank you. Right, right. So, hi everyone, welcome back to another episode, episode 60. We are joined by Thomas Willett and Matt Blackwood from Equality Amplified. We are going to discuss several issues. Well, try to within the hour. And so, yeah, I suppose we should just get into it. So, obviously, do you want to introduce yourselves first of all? Like, introduce a bit about yourself, your background.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'll kick it off if you don't mind, Matt. But yeah, as you said, my name's Thomas Willett. With Matt, we are the co-executive directors of Equality Amplified. We founded Equality Amplified, it was about a year ago now, isn't it? I think we just had our sort of year anniversary.
It is. A birthday was yesterday, I think.
Yeah, it was. And really, we set this up to be a dedicated advocacy organisation committing to fostering equality, inclusivity, and justice for all LGBTQ plus people. And our mission is really rooted in the idea that we want to champion LGBTQ plus voices, rights, and truth through advocacy, education, and combating misinformation, which is a pretty big one in these times. So yeah, Matt, anything you want to sort of add?
I mean, just to echo most of what Thomas has said, but for me personally, I'm quite big in the LGBTQ advocacy space within my workplace as well. So I'm able to work in sort of an interoperable way between the two, which is very, very useful and brings some value add to what I do as a job and in everyday life. But actually, the secret is I'm a techie by trade, and that's sort of been my background for the last 20 years until probably, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It came onto my radar, really what was going on in the world. I took my blinkers off and paid more attention. And yeah, here we are. Trying to build something really good. So,
yeah,
long may it last.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. So, like, you've come from that sort of space, whereas I sort of fell into this sort of advocacy through sort of my academic pathways. I started off sort of writing about LGBTQ plus experiences during my sort of undergrad and through my masters as well. And it was when I was trying to look for a topic to do my PhD on, I sort of stumbled across what was going on within the trans community and particularly J.K. Rowling's essay on gender. And that's when it sort of hit me, sort of the misinformation and everything that was going on in that space against trans people. And that sort of wanted to spur my sort of research topics off in that. And then from academia, it sort of evolved into more of a advocacy activism sort of route. And then, me and Matt sort of got talking online and decided that, why don't we try and create something a bit more formalized, a bit more concrete that people can sort of use to rally behind, to try and advocate and make some positive change.
Awesome.
Whatever
So,
do you mean misinformation? You mean her essay on gender
Yeah,
was well-researched, scientifically
yeah.
sound arguments.
Did you and Matt know each
Fucking
other
baby can
beforehand?
like that fucking essay.
Yeah. So did you and Matt know each other beforehand, or prior to setting up Equality, or?
So we kind of crossed paths a bit, didn't we, over a couple of years, I think. It must have been on Twitter, sort of like talking to each other, commenting on sort of things, supporting each other. And then I think it was you sort of approached me with an idea for, what was it? It was like a chat room, wasn't it, initially?
Yeah, I think the original idea was let's get a bunch of like-minded people together, have a discussion, see where we go from there. And interestingly, that doesn't actually work.
It's easier said than done.
So, it is. And to be honest, I think what drew us closer together as as co-founders and getting to where we are today is predominantly, for me on a personal level, absolute frustration at the state of play that the world is in, and knowing that people like Tom are like-minded enough that we share such a common vision for how we think the world should be and what we'd expect of of people, and that goes, that's on both sides of the coin. That doesn't just go for one particular demographic of people. But when you've got somebody who shares a value with you that is pretty much aligned, along the same thought pattern, in my mind, it was more of this is a really good opportunity to, collaborate with somebody with the same passion and hopefully drive it forward.
Yeah.
We cross-person on Twitter. It's like, what a horrifying sentence, really. So, like that could end. We learn from each other on Twitter. Yeah. But it seems to have ended up great. But like, what a fucking cesspool that place is.
Yeah,
it's bad.
I love it.
I deleted my account about 3 months ago. Honestly, I got to the point where Tom is the go-to for all things over there these days. Because I just can't. There's only there's only so much you can do, isn't there, in terms of being constantly uplifting and positive in a continuously negative environment before you've got to, for your own safety and health, remove yourself from it. Tom's a lot more headstrong than me with that space for sure.
Yeah, I keep getting deleted from Twitter, so I don't know.
You must be doing something right.
I think I'm on my 21st account now, like 21st. Yeah. But then again, I'm not a positive or uplifting voice on Twitter. I am very much the opposite. But like, the worst person fighting the right cause is what I aim for. Sorry.
It's what you make it, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Oh yeah, I'm like growing up on internet forums in the 2000s. I kind of ended up becoming a massive piece of shit, and then I happened to be like holding decent opinions as well, so I might as well use my power for good. That power being vile.
But I think you've got a point there, isn't it? Like everyone has a voice, and we do have good, somewhat freedom of speech to be able to say what we need to sort of help people. And when it comes to advocacy, I think that's what I just try to do as much as possible, is just use my voice to be able to uplift others and to cut through a lot of the misinformation. And that's partly why I sort of stay there, is that I don't want these spaces to become just echo chambers full of lies, mistruths, disinformation, and that there's nobody sort of challenging that from our side. Because that would just mean that it festers and spreads a lot easier. People, they accuse me of, you're attacking this person. It's like, no, I'm criticizing what they're saying and highlighting that it's misinformation with facts. That's not
the idea of attack
anyone.
Is so fucking insane. Like it's genuinely like it's because I saw someone say that you had attacked J.K. Rowling, and like,
I get that all the time.
First and foremost.
It was a funny thing. It happened. It's happened a couple of times over the last couple of years, and the recent one was last Thursday. And funnily enough, I was at the time recording another podcast with Frida Wallace about activism and combating hate. And as soon as we started the podcast, I had my Twitter feed on the side of the screen, and I just saw all of these notifications come rolling in, and these DMs come rolling in of, you're a paedophile, you're an abuser, kill yourself, you're a misogynist, you're a monster, etc. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And then it wasn't until I saw that J.K. Rowling had quote tweeted me that I realized, okay, that's why I'm getting a lot more abuse than I would normally get. And it's just ironic that we were just talking about that.
Yeah,
this
it's
like,
like,
my fans,
I
would fucking end my career as an author right then and there. I don't know. But it's also what you said about like amplifying voices and stuff. Like, it's also because you're a bigger account than I am. I don't have any growth because I constantly get deleted again. Like, I'm in my mid-30s, I think. Not years, age-wise, I am though, but like follower-wise, and I've heard that it's impossible to actually follow me because I just disappear and then keep turning back up. But like even so, like I feel like it's because I don't care about the weird abuse that they try to send my way. That doesn't actually hurt me. So it's like if I can take the fucking attention from actually going at someone who would get hurt by it, then fuck, I need to kind of be there.
Like I can. Like,
and I feel like
I can.
The same as.
Yeah, I can speak to some of the abuse, like you've received, Thomas. Like because for some unknown reason, and me and Max have spoken about this on a previous podcast, probably a few months ago now. Like I don't know what it is because it all stems into this transvestigation bollocks. What is it about me? What is it about my photo in general?
Oh, that you're a trans woman.
Yeah. Do you know that
he gets clocked more often than I am. Yeah, it's fucking bizarre.
I think even Tom got transvestigated once.
Yeah, I did. Well, I got it. It was and there was one recently as well. They can't decide whether I'm a trans man or a trans woman. Is the funny thing. Either I'm trying to become a woman or I'm failing at being a man, and it's just it just goes to show you that that their mantra that you can always tell just is a load of rubbish.
Yeah, it's like, and also I've had the same false defamatory accusations thrown on me. I'm a paedophile, a groomer, and all of that. And it's like, and I try and use a different tactic to Max, even though I can be a bit of a dick, right? They can't. The thing is, they are so.
You're a person at least, like
well, they are in such a bubble. Their bubble consists of following anti-trans people, right? Such as J.K. Rowling. The only reason they are their friend, she is their friend, is because she's a billionaire and she can build them out. That's the only reason they cozy up to her. If she was to come out and say, you know what, do a very deep apology, I'm deeply sorry, and turned her back, they would be running shit scared. But because they cozy up to her, and because she's got nothing better to do, and she wants to sit in a mouldy house. No, oh sorry, I've got better things to do than take care of the mold that's currently infesting my house. Oh no, it's ridiculous. And that neatly goes into the recent Facebook Meta policy of hate. And it's like, I rarely use Facebook anyway. I used to run a mental health page on there, but I've lost access to it, which pissed me off because that was 7 years hard work down the drain. I could no longer access it. So I was like, oh, fuck this shit. I use it for family to keep in contact. Yeah. But the recent policy change, in line with, flipping, what's his face, Zuckerberg, donating, what was it? How much did he donate? To
2 billion.
Trump?
Or 2 million, rather.
Yeah. It's like, I never liked the guy, personally. I always thought he was a bit of a dick.
You didn't think he was a hero in the social network?
Yeah, exactly. It's like...
funniest difference I've ever seen between a real person and the depiction of them in a character. Like suave, fast-talking, intelligent, charming, and then we have fucking robotic cheap man.
Yeah. It's like, so this new policy, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Maybe he's trying to lick Donald Trump's arse. I don't know. But it's going to end up backfiring. But anyway, let's get into that. So,
if you want to give a rim job, there's easier ways to do it than donate $2 million.
Oh yeah, there was that. But yeah, so Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, who have been living under a rock, there were changes made to Meta's hateful conduct policy. So I can quickly, so let me pull
literally
up.
me you're talking about there living under a rock. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't use Facebook. Well, I do, but that's only to like remind mom that my life is better than her. He made mistakes.
Yeah.
In having me. But yeah, so I completely missed the whole Meta thing. I've heard about it, but like I actively didn't know anything.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, I have the link pulled up on my phone, and I'm obviously, you know, and I sent you the links as well, Max, in an email that you can.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, pull up.
I have it up somewhere around here. Like maybe
yeah,
I should be professional for once.
Yeah. So on January 7th, 2025, Meta made sweeping changes to its policy on hateful conduct, which went down well with MAGA, obviously. This article examines how these changes put marginalized groups at serious risk. Well, we already knew that it would. In the context of the Online Safety Act, which, I mean, this is all in line with Project 2025. This is what, you know, Donald Trump proudly said this is what's going to happen. So from your standpoint, and obviously you're all about grassroots activism, you know, in empowering voices. So what is your take on your response?
Wow, do you want to take this one, Matt? Do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah. Well, to start off, really, we did actually write an open letter to Meta within 24 hours of the information going public. And I think, you know, the root of what we were trying to explain to Meta is that at the end of the day, if you take away protections that existed for a very good reason, then you're obviously going to amplify hate. And I can tell you that within mere hours of that changing effect, you know, comments on posts descended into abuse, you know, awful language, you know, the whole you can call you know, a gay person it, for example, or a that,
mentally
or, you know,
ill.
or mentally ill. People are leaning into it all the way. And you know, yeah, so we sort of put an open letter out to them. And we even, I think, if I remember rightfully, we even sent the letter to some of Facebook's executives as well.
Yes, we did, yeah.
Of which, of no surprise, we didn't get a reply, which, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that's by the by, we didn't expect to get one anyway. And then I think, you know, that what we sort of did from there was hope that through the power of social media and our connections across various channels, that somebody at Meta might actually see it. And we don't know whether they did or whether they didn't. I know that on LinkedIn, I did have a person from Meta reach out to me, and all they said was that they were sorry, you know, and that's just an individual who was in the same boat as everyone else, at being absolutely horrified with the policy changes of their own company.
I will just inject there, because they would have seen it, because I think it was the post. We published our letter on Facebook, and I think within a couple of hours they had taken it down, hadn't they? Citing
yes.
Yeah, and they cited breaches of cybersecurity?
I remember this. So I remember. So on our Facebook page, we actually Tom did it that day. Posted up a link to the open letter, and Facebook took it down under the guise of a breach of cybersecurity. And then when we appealed
they did exactly. God, that's the funniest.
Yeah, and then when we
appealed
it, they did the same again, and it wasn't until the media picked it up that they backtracked without so much as a comment and put it back. So, you know, I think they were playing a very dangerous game at that point of saying or implying that we were committing effectively cybersecurity fraud, I think was the exact terminology they used, by pointing out their own shortfalls.
Yeah, and it's ironic because the whole guise of this policy change, from their perspective, was to foster freedom of speech, but then they're actively restricting our freedom of speech to be able to criticize this policy change that puts, LGBTQ plus people and other protected groups in harm of being abused. And yeah, it was just ironic that they decided that they would infringe upon our freedom of speech and take this post down, which obviously was not a breach of cybersecurity regulations at all. And the other ironic thing as well was that a lot of anti-trans groups were celebrating this change in the policy, that because now they could be openly transphobic on Facebook and Instagram and not be reprimanded for it. But it's a double-edged sword, because a lot of these anti-trans groups who pretend to be, women's groups, etc., that this hateful conduct policy change affected women as well, because now people could call women objects and other derogatory terms online without receiving any repercussions as well. So what it really showed was that these anti-trans groups are more than happy to forego the protections for themselves and for women in order to harm and abuse trans people and other minority groups. And it really just shows, the sort of people that, we're trying to, highlight attacking trans people, that they're really just out there to cause harm, facilitate abuse, and they're not really concerned with this faux narrative of protecting women's rights, protecting women's spaces, protecting women.
Yeah, because I don't know how many, there have been so many times I have heard this narrative, especially from, the likes of flipping Mr. Ogre himself, Mr. Graham Linehan, who's a massive flipping turd, say, oh, I'm protecting women, I'm protecting children. You're doing the exact opposite. We only have to look back in history and look what happened towards the black community. Segregation, right? That's what they're vying for, right? Without realizing it. They're wanting to segregate, bring back segregation, right? Say, oh, trans people can't go here, they can't go here. It's like, and on top of that, like you just pointed out, Thomas, they couch this in feminism. They're anti-feminists. But they couch themselves as, oh, they're for women. Well, no, you're not. If you were for women, you should be for all women. But they can't see that because, again, they're in their bubble. And they're doing themselves an injustice. Because, yeah, they're coming after trans people, gay people. It's just all repackaged homophobia, right? They're going to come after you. And who's to blame? Because it's not going to be the people that you are supposedly defending.
Well, this is the thing, because if you look at the fact that transphobia was and is repackaged homophobia, you've only got to look at what's going on in the US right now to see that exact repackaged homophobia being rolled out as homophobia. So we're already moving on to that next, we're at the next piece of their plan. The only saving grace I ever have in my mind when I think about this is the fact that if we look at history and how it repeats itself, there's always been it's horrible, but there's always been a minority that's taken the fall at some point somewhere. And obviously that doesn't make it right by any means, and that shouldn't be happening. But we have to look at the fact that history has this almost this peak and trough where it will go up and then down and then quiet, then up and down. So and in 5 years' time, they'll pick on someone else. It could even be us again. We might. I mean, I think we're already about to hit a full circle moment. But it's just the state of things like that. I mean, one thing, I was actually talking to someone completely unrelated to Equality Amplified earlier on about the state of online safety in general, and it's like people are saying, well, if you take things like trans people, gay people, or the LGBTQ, the whole community of people, is that there is no such thing as a generalized consensus of what constitutes harm and what doesn't. And until every society or every government or every governing country comes to some unanimous consensus of what that is, we're forever going to see the peak and trough of this situation, whether it happens to us or whether it happens to someone else.
Yeah, because I'm also, because, you know, and, you know, like, back in the day, I'm not that old, but back in the day, I used to watch a show called Gimme Gimme Gimme.
It was a good show, to be fair. You can't.
I was more of a fan of Kathy Burke, right?
Yeah, same.
and I can't. I guess I can on the podcast account, but I can't be bothered because I've, you know, infused enough of their bio as it is. I'm starting to reject it. James, I can't remember his second name. Not that I give a shit, but he rewrites history so much, and and they believe it. Like, for instance, like, I'm sure we'll get to it at some point. They were saying that Marsha P. Johnson wasn't trans. Yes, he was.
There's a lot of history revisionism going on
to their audience. It's like, you know, we know history, like history. Okay, yeah, you rewrite history. Go on, but we have the truth. But they won't accept the truth because these people who align themselves, and, you know, Raymond in hand has already come out and said that he's MAGA, even though, you know, okay, whatever. So he's gonna kiss Trump's ass when he eventually moves to America because he wants to open carry, apparently. That's one of the main reasons. And it's like, you elected a convict, a rapist, and this is the whole movement. Go after trans people. There were only two genders, even though gender is different from sex, but okay. Mind blown. And it's just like revision after revision. They're gonna start tearing away education, which has already happened. And it's like, what the hell are we living in? What world?
But they want it to happen. Like, I'm sorry, we can't assume that they're blinded. They're not dumb. They're evil. And I'm going to, like, yeah, there's a fucking doubt in my mind. The people who spearhead this wants to commit a genocide against trans people and gay people. Like, throwing out a few faggots on the fire. Like, that's
well, the sort of cruelty underlines it all. You know, and cruelty is the point of it. You know, they when you look at the rhetoric these people use, when you look at what they want to do to minority groups, it's just it's unnecessary cruelty. There's no need to ban trans people from, you know, the spaces that they need to access, because there's no evidence to suggest that their inclusion in those spaces creates an increased risk of abuse for people.
You'll also find that one of the largest contributors, or shall we call it a disguise of, or whatever it is that, sorry, I'm taking my sock off. I do apologize. I lost the blood flow to my foot then. Was that it's being done under the guise of religion. If you listen to Donald Trump and MAGA people, it's all about Christianity and what their faith means to them, which, funnily enough, doesn't align with what Christianity really is. You know, take it from someone who's
easier.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. It's easier for a rich man to get through. It's easier for a camel to get through a needle's eye than a rich man to get into heaven. I don't know if Donald Trump really should talk about Christianity. The fucking mammon cock-sucking motherfucker.
I think
Let's suck off capitalism some more. Deep throat that. Fucking.
I mean, if you look at how You look at the ethos of political parties in particular. When you look at centrist, I say centrist, and then you've got, right wing, far right, so on and so forth, is that a lot of those parties and those belief systems were founded off the back of some sort of belief. And the most annoying thing about that is, like, you take it from me, I'm 37 now. I think from the age of about 13 to 21, I was brought up in a church environment, and I know what Christianity means to people, and I know what their core beliefs are. And I can tell you hand on heart, that is not what these people are aligning with at all. I think it is just straight up fascism and dictatorial behavior. And if you look at how take World War II, for example, and how Hitler's regime went from 0 to 100 so quickly, it was because all the things that were built to protect people were dismantled with a steamroller. And you've only got to look at the US right now, and you can see exactly the same behavior panning out. It's just wrapped differently. What gets me is why humanity, or just Americans in general, can't see the thing that is as plain as the nose on their face. I'll never understand people.
Worse? It's uglier?
I swear to God, I think it's wrapped as a present covered in glitter or something sometimes.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Honestly, I just don't even get it.
I think it's Frankie Boyle who said, like, it was about UKIP, I think. UKIP gives us the chance to have the Nazis back, but without the style. And I kind of feel the same way about these fucking. Okay, I'm not going to be dissing red hats in general, because like I just saw myself in the fucking on the screen, but like it looked like shit. And, you shouldn't oppose to genocide on an aesthetic point of view, but like, even on an aesthetics point of view, this doesn't work.
You know what? I'm gonna coin a phrase from someone we won't name. In a sane world, the normal people would see these problems and these issues for what they are, and a lot of us do. Unfortunately, we seem to be run by a majority insane world, or people that just walk around with blinkers on all the time. It's the whole, it doesn't affect me, so why should I worry or do anything about it, almost. It's like when we talk about things like allyship and asking people to step up and help their peers. And fundamentally, you find the biggest reason why people don't do that is because it's yet to affect them. And I think the principle is quite similar in how it applies to these kind of other scenarios, where you've got a whole bunch of people who believe something, but until something bad happens to them, it doesn't even sit on their radar that there's a problem.
It's
it's like me and Max have, we've done more than one episode, unfortunately, for our sanity, covering, the likes of Helen Joyce, Helen Stanland, and some of the twit, and it's like, I already know the answer to this, but I'm gonna answer it, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because I don't know how we have got to a stage where we have lifted someone like Helen Joyce above the parapet. She has a PhD in maths. She's written a book.
And
it's like, where have we got to? Like, I'm not blaming the vast majority of the society who know the difference and are trans allies. I'm specifically talking to, not that they will listen, the probably 26% or somewhere around there who are against the trans community. Like, you're resting all of your hope on Helen Joyce. Cross-reference that to the cash report. It's like, what are you doing?
There are at least two other people who have completely different degrees in their field who are also prominent gender critical people. The issue we have here is that they're being elevated by politicians and like-minded people.
And by money as well. And I think that's one of the main struggles that we face, is when you look at the anti-trans activist movement, a lot of it is funded by very wealthy backers. They have made this their new careers to try and find ways to remove trans people's rights. They've got the books, they go on the the speaking tours, and they speak to the parliamentarians and the lawmakers, and that's the one thing that we struggle with, because LGBTQ plus activists tend to be very time poor because they can't make this their full-time career. Me and Matt both have full-time jobs and other commitments on the side of doing Equality Amplified. We're resource poor. We're not given the same platforms that these big anti-trans voices are. They talk about being silenced an awful lot for people who supposedly don't have a platform. They're very loud and very
love to
visible.
go
have the
on
loudest
national fucking
voices.
television and talk about how I'm not allowed to go on national television.
Oh yeah, they've all gone on their "I've been silenced" tour at least once. And I mean, I do feel like the tide is slowly turning. The fact that Helen Joyce was deemed to not be an expert by the Australian judicial courts recently. And there was one other was it one other person as well who said
My Forsyther.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I can't remember the exact thing, but she wasn't able to. Oh, she wasn't able to give evidence, was she? Because she wasn't, and they said that she wasn't an expert in biology. But you have these people trying to give evidence.
Biology, maybe.
In a
Were either of these the person who read child porn on the train?
I don't. Who? No. Who,
That was
one of them.
Helen
Who the
Joyce.
fuck was that?
Oh yes, it
Sorry?
was. Yeah, apparently she was reading that Harry Potter fan fiction, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah.
On the train. Yeah, it's bizarre for people who supposedly are so concerned
doing
with
research.
safety and.
I work with
Interesting
teaching lit
research.
to fucking teenagers. Never had to read fictional child porn for it.
No, never. But we are starting to see that people are waking up to the fact that these people are not qualified to be speaking about trans people, their rights, their healthcare, and issues that are impacting them.
Like
Because
on a very fundamental level.
This is it. They're not healthcare experts.
No.
They're not trans healthcare experts. They have degrees in, as we said, economics, mathematics, whatever it is, or they're some sort of consultants. And they shouldn't be given this platform to speak on trans people and their issues. We need to be listening to the healthcare experts who have been working with trans people and who have made it their career to work with trans people, who actually know what they're talking about and leading from their expertise and their example, rather than listening to lobby groups who, at the end of the day, just want to do harm to trans people.
You
on
the head there.
I think less about trans people than these fucking people. Sorry, I was.
No, I think Matt was just saying is, they are lobby groups. That's essentially what they are, and that's all they are. They're not people with specific expertise to be able to discuss these topics, and neither are we. And we accept that, and we acknowledge the fact that we're not trans people, we're not trans healthcare experts. But what we want to do is amplify and elevate those voices that are, to be able to combat this misinformation that these activists are employing to harm trans people.
Yeah, exactly.
Not being a part of a community. Not being a part of the community doesn't mean like you can't the community. Sorry, I have a weird thing about like communities and groups and stuff. I'm a little lonely anarchist sitting here in Sweden yelling at people online. But like, not being a trans person doesn't fucking exclude you from talking about trans people, of course. But like, when you start talking about trans people, and then literally every fucking trans person, aside from like Blair White and some other cunt, decides to like tell you that you're being kind of a fucking genocidal bastard like that. Maybe listen to that community. Like, I'm not saying listen to me. I don't go online to argue with people. Like, I go online to abuse transphobes. That's literally my end game. I'm a bad person, but I happen to be right on this, so I can do that. And then somebody else doesn't get abused. But like, I think because I also don't believe that they're telling the truth when they don't. Like, we just like. No, you're not concerned for women and children. Because then you would be when you start fucking aligning with fascists who have, great history of like fucking helping women and children. The fucking fascists, right?
I think one of the things that needs to change.
Track there,
but... one of the one of the things that needs to change fundamentally really is who we platform and how we platform people.
Yeah.
Because even in our own community, there are people who are elevated into positions to speak for us who probably shouldn't be. And you get a situation where if you start speaking too confidently on things that you aren't an expert in, that's not a good thing, but two, that will continue to elevate that individual or that organization or that group of people, and then that becomes the go-to. The byproduct of that is every other person who has that genuine knowledge and is the professional in that field then never gets opportunity to speak. It's one of them things, isn't it, where if you can find an individual who's willing to compromise, that will always be the go-to person for the sake of media representation than it will for someone who's going to, stand up and fight for their rights or to exist or fundamentally what they might or might not believe.
Cowards.
They are. They really are. And I think it's fair to say India Willoughby has raised this many times. There is almost some really weird thing in British media that means that trans people can't and shouldn't be able to speak. And I think there's so few media outlets that have allowed them in as many months and years at this point. But it was nice to see the other day, actually, there was a very trans positive article. I'm going to say, I think it might have even been in The Guardian, actually, of all places. But there was one of the first trans positive articles we've seen in probably 2 or 3 years. But there is some really strange, I don't know, it's like almost an embargo, isn't it? That's stopping people with knowledge from being able to share it. Unfortunately, they can only share it in places where they're not going to be platformed high enough for the wider people to be able to hear it and assimilate that information and do something with it.
I think it's the fear of putting yourself out there as well, which is stopping a lot of people from speaking up. Because I was talking to this with Frida the other night, and where she was saying that she's been on things like Talk TV and whatnot, and she's talked to these people, and she's put herself in great harm and potential abuse to be able to speak out. And I think that's why a lot of people don't want to speak out, is because of that fear of being dogpiled, being abused and being harassed, etc., for speaking up. But that's because these media outlets have created that environment where they've not made it a safe space to have these conversations in a healthy way. That now that every single time a trans topic comes up, you'll never see a trans person speaking about it from their perspective. It'll always be a non-trans person, and that needs to change. We need to center these conversations with the people that it impacts and affects, and the only way to do that is to create environments where they feel like they will be listened to and heard rather than shouted over and talked down to. I think we're quite far away from that yet, but we're trying our best to make sure that we're putting these sort of people front and center. I think at the beginning of the year, we started working with 3 or 4 different trans organisations on a letter to Google about some work that we're doing, and that's partly what we want to do, is to help bring organisations together and have that sort of one voice. Because this is partly why we set up Equality Amplified, is that we found a lot of people and a lot of organisations were trying to say the same thing, but nobody really had that sort of power or that influence behind them to sort of break through that wall and talk to the people that can make those decisions.
It's more like they're all doing the same thing but differently. So there's a big lack of consistency on how it's done, and that's not anybody's fault. That's the environment that we're in. Just touching on the situation that Tom just mentioned with Google, we're actually having some very productive conversation with Google, to be fair. Although the dialogue is with large gaps of hearing back from them, they are continuing to work with us. Google is a internet monolith, and they've acknowledged what we have been in discussion with them about, which we're not going to go into too much detail about now.
Yeah, of course.
But what we've actually communicated to them has been quite
productive. Just change the fucking slogan because it sounds evil. Don't be evil. Literally the most evil sounding thing on the planet.
Honestly, if you their own, they have some interesting slogans. I've got to be honest, but as a positive, we've had good dialogue with some of these things.
Yeah.
The difference is what happens at this point. Can we do anything that Can we garner anything from this that is going to be useful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where that's where the waiting game comes from, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And the big point of this is, we're not going to them, we're not asking for money, we're not asking for a platform, but we're just asking them to consider the actual issues that we're presenting them with. And, if we can help bring these voices together, these different organizations to tackle this one problem, then I think we're sort of achieving what we set out to do this time last year. So it's good to see that we've started to have that traction, but it's only been because we've been working with these other trans organizations and making sure that we're being led by what they want to say as well.
Yeah. I think that neatly transitions into obviously the work you've done so far and what work you are wanting to
we tried desperately to amplify trans voices by having another trans woman on. Unfortunately, she was the dumbest fucking person I've ever talked to in my entire fucking life. So it just ended up with me abusing her. We wanted to amplify trans voices, and we accidentally abused the trans person. So that was nice of us. We're doing God's work.
So the work you've done so far.
Genuinely fucking dumb.
Oh God! What? So I mean, this year alone, what we did, we January kind of like kicked off with a bit of a bang, didn't it? Really, in terms of sort of the communications and sort of the letter writing we were doing, didn't it? I'm just going to put it out.
Because... I think with the way we work, timing is everything.
Yeah.
Because we could churn out things all the time, all day, every day, and it doesn't really achieve much. So it's all about we time things very carefully for what we're aligning with and the message we're trying to send. And by doing that, we always ensure that what we're putting out there gets a fairly good reach. Like Tom was just saying, this year has been quite an interesting year, and I think the whole changing of government in the US was quite a pivotal point in giving us a lot to work with. And the thing is, even though we're UK based, there are instances like in this scenario where we can be an international voice on the simple fact that these changes affect everybody, not just something within our own borders, for example. It's a global problem. So we sort of went from having that we're UK based to being able to sort of spread our wings into a few other places, which has actually been a net positive for us in terms of reach when it comes to a few of the press releases we've had recently on various things. For example, the Facebook censorship issue where we were censored for supposedly breaching cybersecurity rules and all those kind of things. So it's timing.
On the free speech platform.
Oh well, that's it.
Exactly.
But then Twitter's a free speech platform, isn't it?
I have such a big issue with that shit because I actually am like a huge. It's so good that I actually have nice opinions because I'm like one step away from being such a fucking chud. Like I don't like capitalism. I definitely do like individualist freedom for some fucking reason. But like I'm a huge proponent of freedom of speech. Like actually a believer in it. Actually, to the level that I do find a lot of hate. Like I get the point of hate crime laws. I find them philosophically challenging for me to consider. If I say that, like I know, like on a pure pragmatic level, sure. On a philosophical level, fuck no. But like,
well, the free speech thing is
then I have
interesting,
people-
isn't it? Sorry, no, I was just saying
Yeah,
the free
because, like-
speech element is interesting because on X, that is the platform supposedly free speech, they're actively removing
again, 21st
our
account.
language. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That they're removing accounts and they're removing our ability to verbalize and articulate ourselves in a way that can combat this misinformation by limiting our speech by censoring words like cisgender and cis, for example, because now it makes it really difficult to have conversations where you're trying to distinguish between trans people and cis people, because now that language is not available for us to use.
Trans and non-trans is very, very funny, and it's in how it sort of assumes trans to be the ordinary.
If you look at a pattern, there's this interesting pattern of behavior where we have this situation. I think it's like when someone's talking about women's rights, for example, and it's the all women but not that woman, for example. So there's a lot of that, and that same sort of thing applies in so many places. I'm just trying to think of, like, you've got scenarios where I'm going to lose my train of thought now. And you've got it right there, and it's just there.
I fucking hate that.
Honestly, it's really annoying, but it's. I think fundamentally there are patterns in that kind of attitude that sort of ruminate into other areas of free speech. Is a good example. I found my train of thought now. Is that these are supposed to be free speech platforms, but not for that speech.
Yeah.
So it's I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe in free speech, but not that speech.
Yeah.
And it's the same with people's rights. It's when it's like they say where transphobes can actually and do say, I've got no problem with trans people. They should be allowed to live how they live. But on the other hand, it's like I'm okay with trans people, but not those people.
Yeah.
And it's a pattern that is in almost every corner that you look. If you go and find it, that's the pattern.
Yeah, it's like I'll just tag on to what you just said, Matt. It's like you do have the freedom of speech. You do.
Everybody does.
Everyone does.
Well, most people.
But you don't have. But
depends on where you are.
Well, yeah.
It does. Yeah.
But you also have consequences to that freedom of speech, because you can say what you want, like, okay, whatever. But so do I.
The government.
So you can't silence. So you can't silence me with your freedom of speech, but I can't say what I want to say. That's not how it works. But
and like that's the funniest thing. Like because they're like, oh, we're allowed to say what we want. Like, yeah, but I'm also like responding to. I'm actually indulging in your freedom of speech, you fucking moron. And like, only thing is that I'm more creative and smarter than you. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like,
go cry about it. It's like freedom of speech is also like it's supposed to be the government. I'm going to fucking put a sack over your head and shoot you in the back of some fucking store. It's not to do with me not telling you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
but I think that's exactly what they want, though, isn't it? Is they want that freedom of consequence to be able to attack, harass, and abuse the people that they don't agree with and they don't think should have the same rights as them.
Freedom of conflict, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like I
say that they're not serious debate opponents.
Well,
because I'm definitely going to fucking debate the to be or not to be of me and every other trans person's existence with like fucking kill all fags 1488 on Twitter.
Twitter
the
has a
person
problem.
talking about the night of the long nights is probably the person I want to fucking have a debate with. No, that's the person I want to tell and go kill them.
Yeah, it's like going
Jesus fucking Christ.
It's like when it's like in that same breath, like, oh, we have the freedom of speech to we say, oh, a trans woman is a man and all of that, and they they bring up all of this hate above the parapet, solely condemn, a less than 1% of the population. May I might add, like.
I mean, it makes me feel kind of powerful, actually, to be honest.
I think that's what it is. It's a dominance behavior.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
because let's be honest, there are far more important things in the world than 1% of the trans community. Like at the end of the day, people. There are some people. I mean, some of these people will take Elon Musk as a really good example. Okay, Elon Musk has the ability to effectively take Africa out of food poverty, right?
Yeah.
And still be one of the wealthiest people on the planet. But instead, he'd rather sit there and get angry at trans people because he has a trans child who doesn't want to know him because he's such a horrible person about them.
Yeah.
By the way, what a fucking hero. That was the funniest fucking dressing down I've ever seen someone do of someone, and it was of a fucking dad.
Honestly, the
God damn it.
I must admit.
Yeah.
I wish I had that's the level of spite I wanted to put in my own dad's eulogy. Jesus fucking Christ.
It's like,
I love her.
They put all this hate.
I just need to go out for a smoke, by the way. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, fine. They put all this hate towards a minority. They're also putting the hate towards other minorities. But it's like going back to, obviously trans women being men apparently. And I pointed this out on more than one occasion. It's like men who commit offences, and I always put this in brackets, not all men, right? Because, I don't, go buy into that bullshit. Not cis men who commit sexual offences against women also commit sexual offences towards trans women.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're basically saying is, there's one tiny 1% of men commit all the sexual offences. No, and
that's what they would like you to believe, which is exactly how they word it as well.
Yeah, and when you show them proof, I have done, here's the proof, for instance, because, it goes on my past as well with what I went through, when we talk about child abuse. I can show you every article of a cis man who has committed sexual offences, right? But then their response is...
Please don't.
But their response is, if they will show a well-known anti-trans website full of cis men and their convictions, and they will try and pass that off as trans women. That's their go-to.
I've seen that happen. A certain person's done that on Twitter several times.
I've probably interacted with a few who, and it's like they have a script, and if they don't stick to that script, like a puppet underneath their master, they will get scolded, and they will get reprimanded. You weren't good enough. So they have to stick to that script.
I mean, it's true. They aren't good enough.
But yeah,
they only get good at, as long as they don't say anything they want to hurt my fucking feelings. They have to try better than something that my dysphoria makes me think every time I look in a fucking mirror. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, this is why it's like I have a friend who was between 6 months and to a year into her transition, and she completely stayed away from all of this. All she wants to do is go to work, and when she has a free time, she occasionally plays games on Twitch. But any of this, she just stays away from, because why? need it. And going back to Frida Wallace, you might not agree with her tactics or how she goes about things, but at least she is taking the hit instead of someone else taking the hit who may, for whatever reason, may not be as strong, or may attempt to unallow themselves because of the hate.
And I think on that you're saying, that's actually really important, is because one thing Frida has been trying to do, and I think this is why this is a very valid point, is that she, like many other people, are absolutely sick of hearing one-sided stories about trans people and all the negative rhetoric. So, her and others, admittedly, but more so Frida, especially in mainstream media, has wanted to get into these groups to try and offer that alternative opinion and that different view. And although, that's been somewhat a net positive, even for her, that's been really negative of an experience for her as an individual, because it's a horrible thing to have to do. You can commend her absolutely for taking that step into that domain, but it's a very dangerous domain that is incredibly harmful. And I think we're in a world now where it's going to be super difficult, or is super difficult, to go into these spaces and offer an alternative view without the continuous bashing and hatred and bullying that you get. And let's be honest, when it comes to people, we only want or will take. No, that doesn't sound right. We as people will only take so much. We can only take so much of a battering or beating or being defeated until we just give up. And I actually think a lot of that script, as it were, is about putting people in that position where they just stop bothering. And then it's we won, look at them, see, they ran off. They won't fight, they won't defend themselves anymore.
Yeah,
they run into me.
It's a game on multiple fronts.
Yeah, I can distinctly remember, and this must have been maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago at this point. I can't believe I was on Twitter for 4 years. Fucking hell. A trans child, committed, unalived themselves due to the hatred they were getting online. And then they targeted their mother, who had to leave.
There's a special place in hell for those fucking people.
That's happened a few times as well, actually.
Yeah.
That's not even new. That's a common
I don't believe
thing.
it. I don't believe in hell, but I will personally build it and I will put the fucking souls there. Call me safe.
Brianna Gay, or Jai.
Jai, yeah.
It's like, that deep down, that's what they want. Because that's their tagline, isn't it? They want to eradicate trans people.
And when you highlight, sorry, I was just saying, when you highlight as well that this is the result of the rampant, incessant transphobia and the constant narratives being fed in the media. When you highlight that is the result of that, they say that then we're weaponizing the death of a trans person to further our own campaign. It's like, no, we're not weaponizing anything. We're just pointing out the reality of. Yeah, this is it. Like when you point out the reality of that, when you push bigotry to this extent, people will get harmed, and we've seen that. Hate crimes against LGBT people rose at the same time that hate crimes against trans people rose.
Yeah,
and that's not a coincidence.
No, it's not.
No, but that information is cherry picked to only give one side of that story as well. You can weaponize it in every possible way to make it look like it's a single issue when it's not.
But this is why, and I know I've done that. Like I'm so happy to do it because for whatever reason I have. There's only so much abuse that a person will take, and eventually I'm like going to pack my shit up from Twitter eventually, or I'm going to go down with the site like the cockroach I fucking am. I don't know which one yet. But like for whatever reason, and I think it's spending too much time in forums in the 2000s, I ended up with the fucking thickest skin I've seen on a person. I also think that it's because I don't consider these people. Kind of like they are they are like kick toys. And
well, they're not, are they? They're just internet trolls, aren't they? At the end of the day, they're just anonymous. The majority of them are just anonymous accounts that just set them up to inflict abuse. Like, that's all they are.
Yeah,
I found it's kind of easy to find someone's trigger if you just look for how they use language in general. I've gotten weirdly intensely good at that when I'm when I'm abusing transphobe. And I've started to just hit that because I don't want fucking rational discussion with them. I want to make them cry. And I know I've done it. Yeah. And like, so that's it's not a good thing to do to people, but then again, it's like, that's my niche and it's what I'm good at. And I think that's that's the only reason that I keep doing it.
Yeah, the thing is though, like they trigger themselves. They gaslight themselves. Whenever they speak or to gobshite, they gaslight themselves. But it's like, and so when you present their own gaslighting back onto them, right, they can't handle it.
As you'll notice, their first tweet is always a lie, and then the next one trips them up, so on and so forth, and it snowballs until they're embarrassed themselves.
Yeah, it's like, Helen Stanland, she has so...
She blocked me within a day of me speaking to her about 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, she's just a funny old woman who's got nothing better to do. She is so deeply married herself to her famous question. She can't run away from it now. Her famous penis question. And it's like, what are you doing? There's also another woman. She's a lesbian. She's apparently in the process of opening up a nightclub or a club, a private space in London.
I tried that facial software.
Yeah.
Didn't clock me.
Yeah, and apparently she wants it so private that she has set up a facial recognition system and the process where she takes people's DNA to make sure that they are not trans.
I think that is also literally illegal, and probably why we've not seen or heard
collecting a database of DNA.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked.
But that's completely illegal.
I mean, if you go to that extent, if you go to that extent to try and exclude a group of people from a space, I think you are definitely the problem. That is such an extreme level to go to say you are not welcome and you should not be here, that you're taking someone's DNA or you're using AI facial recognition or whatever it is. The idea that trans people haven't...
Tips for any trans people who want to fool. That's the word.
I just want
people who wants to fool facial recognition software. It's all in the eyebrows, motherfucker.
Yeah,
all in the eyebrows. Just make them a bit slim and fix them.
I just want to say this, right, so that our listeners and people who watch this understand. I have so much sympathy, empathy for those who have been sexually assaulted, abused by men.
Okay,
please don't take what I've said out of context. Right, I have massive sympathy and empathy. Right. However, going back to the segregation, if we start segregating people, we will get to a point where you will not be able to go anywhere without somebody, some enforcement or whatever, will have to basically make sure that you're going where you're going, trying to deter you from where you want to go. Because if this, let's play a hypothetical game. Let's say
getting cavity search on my way into the lesbian bar,
right? Which I frequented a lesbian pub before, and we didn't know it was a lesbian.
You are a trans woman.
Because, well, yeah, apparently, and this pub, there was no fanfare, there was no massive signs. It was just an.
There was no fire escape.
Yeah, right. And
sorry, that was a Simpsons reference. And
yeah, and okay. And I was probably maybe 14, 15 at that time. I was like, okay. Like, but it's like, what goes on? Like, seriously, what goes on in your head to think, oh, I know, I'm going to open up a club specifically for lesbians. Trans women can be lesbians as well. So, but okay. Oh, wait a minute. I'm so terribly wrong. Then
you can also just say no if you don't want to fuck someone for any reason. Like it's okay to not sleep with trans people. It is. I don't care about your reasons. You shouldn't have.
It's like
open a fucking bar for it, you fucking loser.
I reached out to this person because I'm all for having a conversation with people who I vehemently disagree with. She obviously declined. And then the next day, she appeared on Grinner's podcast. But it's like...
I still want to get Glinner on here. Oh no, I'm used to shit out of him.
Yeah, that'll never happen because, he can't, because, he'll be fine.
He can't leave his bridge for that long.
No, but it's like when he was in Australia. He was being served by a woman who had short hair, and he was scared.
That was the best part of. We have that in like our clip show when I did the edit. That was the funniest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
When I just had Glenna come in, like looking at that. Like I think I used Mia Farrow as the short-haired woman.
Yeah. But it's like So
I'm so proud of that. I learned to animate because of that.
Yeah.
So, well, I think a good way to sort of end this is just to stress that trans people have always been sort of included and part of our community. History shows us this. At Stonewall, it was trans and gender non-conforming people who were there on the first night, threw the first bricks, and started the modern pride movement that we had today. And if we didn't have those people, we wouldn't have the rights that we have as gay men. So to say that they've never been part of our community, that they've never been part of our spaces, or never welcomed in our spaces, is factually incorrect. And we just let people live. just let people live. And if you don't want to talk to a particular person, you don't have to. Like, nobody's forcing you to sleep with, to talk with, to date with. Nobody that you don't want to. That's not anyone's concerns. What trans people, what LGBT people want is to be able to just live a life that is equal and dignified.
My other line as well on that is, that I've said this to maybe one or two. I have only ever had one TERF that I have had a genuine conversation with, where we both disagree, but I've had a conversation with that has been respectful. That's only ever happened to me once. Right? But my go-to line is...
Good thing I didn't say that would be in there and make it very fucking disrespectful in no time.
Without you knowing it, you more than likely pass or interact with a trans person. and you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
The only reason, it's only those like Frida Wallace, India Willoughby who put themselves out there on the platform, like to raise important issues. It's only because they put themselves out there that you feel that you have the right to send them abuse. But in any other circumstance,
until I had to buy a cigarette.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
All of a sudden, I sound like this.
Yeah, you wouldn't know that they were trans.
Completely. And I think that's the main point, really, isn't it? Is that the minute we start regulating and policing these spaces and our bodies in this way, everyone loses their bodily autonomy. And we've already started to see this in the US. And you can't be campaigning for women's rights in one hand while on the other hand advocating to remove the bodily autonomy for an entire group of people.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think we will leave it there because obviously you both have got other stuff to do. So, if I will probably send you a DM probably in a couple of days to see if you want to schedule a part 2 within your schedule. But thanks for coming on. Thank you to Matt.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It's been a ride.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. Looking forward to getting into some more at a later date because obviously, I think we only covered 2 topics.
That's fine. We had a great time talking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're not going to come on. One of our hosts is a fucking narcissistic piece of shit who just talks about himself constantly. I'm not talking about Torin. You've gotten at least a word in edgewise, so I'm proud of you.
So I will put all of your links down below to Equality Amplified, and any other links that you want to share with me, I will put down below. Everyone listening, do go follow Equality Amplified on Twitter if you still use that shit show. Or if you're on Blue Sky, follow them over there, follow their work, and obviously, I'll put all of that down below. So I will, before I forget, because I tend to do that, I will stop the recording.